So, very welcome. We need to get starting with the time here. Very welcome to this next session here entitled Effectivity of Mitigation Measures for Ungulates and Wildlife Vehicle Collision. So we have 8 presentations to go through. And the first one off is Colino Rabanal, talking about temporal variations in the effectiveness of perimeter fences to prevent wildlife roadkills, the case of road deer. And we will have several presentations on the road deer. So, floor is yours.
You think it's necessary the microphone? Okay, well, let's start. Well, we are going to talk about 3 species, but we are going to focus only in one because its behavior, it's complex, and the results are a surprise for us, at least at the first moment we started to work with this study. Well, the first slide is common, so I'm going to pass. All of us are here because we have problems with wildlife. One of these problems is wildlife animal vehicle collisions. That is a problem for traffic safety. And we have problems, but also we have a lot of solutions, different solutions. We have a very huge range of solutions. In most cases, we know the effectivity, but of course, we have a lot of things to learn and to understand. We are going to focus on this kind of mitigation measure, fencing. All of you know that is the most, or maybe one of the most effective measures, but also it has problems, of course. It's very effective, but we need a very good maintenance and effectiveness of this fencing can be reduced for different things. For instance, lack of maintenance. You can see a photo of a hole. Some animals can go inside the highway because of this hole. Maybe the poor design in some cases, the effectiveness of fences are not so, it's not so good because of this poor design. You can see, for instance, a hole between in these wildlife passages. There is a hole, for instance, or in many cases there is not this form of design. The fence is not installed. Other things that can happen and can decrease the effectiveness of this fencing is, for instance, the access from secondary roads that are not fenced, and it's very difficult because many animals can go inside the fenced roads using this secondary access. But we know a lot of things about fencing, a lot of things, but some questions must be studied. For instance, what about the biological cycles and ecological requirements of the species? If there is any kind of relationship between the biological cycle of a species and the effectiveness of fencing? It's a good question, and well, in fact, we arrived there just, it was a the question of this talk is, do they have any impact on the effectiveness of this fence, the biological cycles? Well, let's check. The overall objective of this talk is to verify the existence of seasonal variations, of different patterns in the effectiveness of fencing for the road deer. After that, we can, when we finish the talk, we realize why we are talking about the road deer. And we have 3 specific sub-objectives: seasonal variations in this effectiveness of the fencing for 3 species: wild boar, road deer, and red deer. We want also to explore differences between the hours, if there is any kind of change between hours between fenced and unfenced roads. And of course, also the third one is to identify variables related to land use, to road characteristics that may be related to the location of these red deer vehicle collision hotspots. Well, this is some of you know that the road fencing in Spain, it's mandatory that high speed, 4-lane high speed highways, it's mandatory that they are fenced. The fences can vary, but in fact, they are not very high. So this is the MS side. And we are going to work with these 4-line highways. And we are going to work with the reports for the Spanish traffic authorities. You know that in those reports, we have the name of the road, the kilometer point, the day, the hour, and the species. We work with nearly 140,000 reports. This is a huge number, so the results are very robust. And the first thing we did was classify these reports according that if they were located in a fenced or an unfenced road. Okay, we are going to focus on the road deer. We have a very huge problem with the road deer in Spain, but also in Europe, of course. The number of collisions with road deer is increasing in Spain last years. Well, in 2023, the number decreased because of one illness. And we are going to work with the reports of these, with the reports of animal vehicle collisions with road deer, but also we are going to work with the road deer hotspots. The hotspots for road deer in fenced areas, in fenced roads, were obtained by using the software KDE with Michal. It's here. We define 3 kinds of hotspots. The first one, spatial hotspot during the temporal hotspot. We are going to see one temporal hotspot. There is a concentration of accidents in these fence roads for the road deer in a certain period of time. We are going to work with this spatial hotspot. We also we are going to work with the spatial hotspot for road deer for the rest of the year. We have one hotspot for one period, and for the rest of the year, we have another type of hotspot. And the third one, we have control segments in order to compare the spatial patterns, the spatial patterns of this road deer. Well, we characterize these hotspots with different variables. We film a form of each hotspot. We take into account forest, the percentage of forest, crop, pastures, shrublands, and artificial uses. And we also take into account the density of roads in this, the density of access to these fence roads, the conservation status, the vegetation, and the slope. Most are percentages, but in this one, there are categorical variables. Okay. Well, and the results, we had nearly, in fact, you have here the number of animal vehicle collision in the last in the period 2011-2019. And you can see that the percentage of animal vehicle collisions in fence roads is higher for the wild boar. In fact, the percentage for deers, roe and red deer, is quite low, nearly 3-4%. So fences are very useful for this kind of for this species. But we're going to talk about now about temporal patterns. Okay, this is for me, it's the most interesting graphic in this talk. If we compare the temporal pattern of the accidents in unfenced roads against fenced roads, you can see the red line. It's you can see it's the daily proportion per thousand of accidents in relation to the annual total. So you can see that in fenced road, accidents only take place in a short period of time, maybe 60, 70 days. And the rest of the year, they are very uncommon inside fences roads. You can ask if this pattern is similar in other species. We can compare with whiteboard. This is the reason I told you that we are going to talk about roe deer, because this pattern it's specific for the roe deer. For instance, if we compare with whiteboard, what we obtain is that for whiteboard, the pattern is nearly the same inside fenced roads and unfenced roads. They have the same pattern, but remember, roe deer is completely different. There are very enormous changes in the temporal pattern of accidents inside unfenced roads in relation to fenced roads. In whiteboard, it's nearly the same. And the red deer, we don't have a lot of data. And this is big. The Strain's graphic is explained because of that. But we think that the pattern is nearly the same inside unfenced and fenced roads. Well, we can check another differences between these unfenced roads. The time of the day, it's also different. You can see, for instance, that inside the unfenced roads, inside fenced roads, the accidents are commoner during the early morning. This is because the density of traffic is high, at least in comparison with the unfenced, but it's there are differences. And also you can see differences between the pattern. You remember that we were working with hotspots, the two different hotspots. One, remember this one? This is the first hotspot. We obtained the hotspot for these accidents, and we obtained the hotspots for the rest of the year accidents. Okay? If we compare, you can see that the hotspot during the concentration of accidents inside fence roads has a peak during the sunrise. It's larger than that peak that during the rest of the year. And if we work with the land uses and road characteristics, what we obtain is that if we compare the three types of hotspots, the hotspots during the concentration of road deer accidents, the hotspot during the rest of the year, and hotspot, the control segment, we obtain differences. This is a Cruz-Wallis and T-square test. We obtain differences in forest, in crop, in artificial uses, in the density of access from secondary roads, and also in the slope. We can check the density of access. It's higher. The hotspots during the periods of concentration of road deer accidents inside fence roads, it's higher. The density of access is higher, lower during the rest of the year, and it's even lower in the control segment. The proportion of forests is higher during the rest of the year. It's lower for that period of concentration in fence roads. You can think that this is, you can ask why, which is explanation behind this pattern. In that moment, if you know about the life cycle about the roe deer, you know that this is the moment, this is a crucial moment for the species, because adults start to fight and young start to their dispersion. So they move, even the adults start to fight also, they move more. So it's a period of time with larger movements. And of course, during the rest of the year, the land use is more related to the characteristics of road deer, forest, but in the moment of this concentration, it's more related to crops, for instance, and areas with lower slopes. Of course, there are individuals that are in dispersion and they cross a lot of infrastructures, and this is the moment of their life cycle that they cross fence roads and fence roads. The rest of their life cycle, they don't use to cross these fence roads. Some take home messages. Road deer accidents show significant variation in seasonal patterns between fenced and unfenced roads. You see the concentration. This difference may be linked, we say previously, to their biological cycle and differ from what is seen from other species like wild boar or red deer. This is different and it's unique for the road deer. In terms of early distribution, accidents are proportionally more abundant, as I said before, during the early morning hours. This pattern it's more prominent during the temporal hotspot. And during this temporal hotspot, road accidents are more common in these areas with low proportion of forest, high proportion of crops and flat slopes. And as I said, secondary axes represent an opportunity for entry and facilitate movement of road deer. Thank you.
So many thanks. Very interesting study. Do we have questions here in the room? We have time for one question, I believe. Yes.
Thank you for all this very interesting information. Just one question related to the methodology. You assessed the level of maintenance using Google Street View.
Yeah.
Does it have some kind of biases?
This is a problem because, in fact, we don't have enough time to explain it, but we work with hotspots that maybe they have 5 kilometers on average. So you have to decide if the design is poor, if the maintenance is not very good. It depends. So it's very difficult, even if you go to a field, to categorize this maintenance in order to explain it. But I think the results are not dependent on this categorization of this use of Google Street View. The pattern is quite clear. So of course, maybe if with a field work, we can identify in a better way the maintenance, for instance. But this is the first problem. The second problem is to define only an average value for 5 kilometers of this is the average of this hotspot. So it's difficult. Yeah, it's in the future we want the field and to compare our results. The field is
Many thanks. We don't have no time for any more questions. We need to go to the next speaker, please. And very, very interesting to see that we have patterns in road deer, and we do not see the same in wild boar, an animal that is very hard to keep outside fencing and so forth. So next speaker is entitled Wildlife Fencing at German Highways and Federal Roads, Requirements and Management Implications. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for introducing. I need the presenter. Or you can do the job for me. So thank you. I'm a postdoc researcher at the Forest Research Institute in Germany, Southwest. And the project aim was to find out the types of wildlife fencing are used in Germany and where are the advantages and the problems. So it's not working. Okay, so now it's working. So basically we have three types of wildlife fencing in Germany. This type is the traditional classic one used in Germany, all over in Germany. The reason is that we have the German guideline or fence regulations, which present this type of fence. The height is 1.6 meter for roe deer and depends on the species in the area, can up to 2.2 meters. This fence type just have one digging protection. It's a single row of barbed wire. And the problem is that the regulations are from 1985 and they're quite old fashioned. And because of that, you don't have a climbing protection. And the lifespan is around about 15 to 25 years. And the problem I will show you in the next slide. As in the first talk, you can see the problem with the digging protection. Here you see the barbed wire. That doesn't work anymore. You have holes, you have everywhere digging species like badgers, red fox or wild boar. And they dig underneath the fence and also here. And then you have other species who enter the roadside. You have a little bit fur inside. So you have all the other species, and then you have the problem with the road safety. So this digging protection doesn't work. And the other problem is ingrowing vegetation. So the maintenance service can't remove the vegetation properly. And you have always a little stripe at the fence material, and then the vegetation is growing up. And after 15 or 20 years, this is fully totally crashed fence, and you have to rebuild the fence. The actual problem is when you have, beside the common species, endangered species or protected species. Oh, sorry. This type, the challenge in the last years, we found out the maintenance service tried to solve the problem with this digging species. And they started to use these plates made from recycled plastic in the dimension 2.5 meters and 50 centimeters in height. And this will installed in the ground. So you have 20 centimeters above the ground and 30 centimeters within the ground. So you, the digging species don't have the possibilities to dig under the fence. And the 20 centimeters above the ground, it's a good solution for the maintenance service. They can use the cutters or whatever, and they can go along the plastic plate and don't destroy the fence material. So with this type, maintenance is possible. And so I guess the lifespan is much higher than with the traditional type. However, when you have, for example, wildcats in your area, this fence type doesn't work because it doesn't have a climbing protection. And then they find other solutions. And this is the second type used in Germany. So this is also a wildlife fence for the common species as well as the protected species. The fence is higher. It's 1.8 meter when you have, for example, wildcats in your area. And it can go up to 3.5 meters, for example, when lynx is present. You have this climbing protection. So it's, in this case, in this fence type, it's going down. The wildcats can grab around and climb over the fence material. And you have a digging protection like this plastic plates or a fence material which is grown into the ground. So this type is much more solid and much more expensive, and the lifespan is much higher. So we found out that you can use this type for 50 up to 100 years. The third type is similar to the second type. It's also for the common species as well as for protected species like wildcats. It's a little bit different. You have these fence panels and with a climbing protection. In this case, it's going up. So the cats can't climb into this fence panels and climb over the panels. And in this case, this fence type is built with a concrete foundation in 80 centimeters in the width and 20 centimeters into the ground. And that's enough to stop digging animals. The problem is that when you have wildcats in your area, they don't, or it's they are not allowed to come into the road area. So the lifespan is close to the second type. It's 50 to 100 years, and the costs are similar. So in this case, types 2 and 3, it's around about 250 euros per meter. So we found out that wildlife fencing, of course, it's a really powerful technique in mitigation when you properly design the fence and build it correctly, like you don't have holes and the conjunction is possible. You have to consider the species you have in your area. If you have jumping animals or climbing species in your area, then you have to choose the right fence. Also, you have it's really important to have a digging protection that's working, so this barbed wire is useless anymore. It's also important to reduce the vegetation into the fence, because then the functionality is not possible when you have vegetation in your fence. And for example, the animals can, for example, wildcats can climb over the fence. It's also important to construct the fence close to the roadside. So it's the maintenance, it's easier. And the application should be focused on highways and motorways. So thank you very much.
Great, many thanks. Very interesting. We are a little short on time here for questions, I believe. So we do need to go to the next presenter. While we have the next presenter coming up, I can also share with that with what the wildlife fencing, most people say is only the wild boar that is pushing among the ungulates underneath the fences, but we do know that fallow deer and red deer and roe deer also squeezing under, so it's important for many ungulate species. So next talk is entitled Nonlinear Phenomena in Mammalian Alarm Calls, Reduce Receiver Habituation. So very interesting, and I hope with technology will work with the videos. Perfect. So I will talk about study that is part of a research program called Trical, and it's financed by the Swedish Transportation Administration. And it's coordinated by the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, focusing on infrastructure impact on biodiversity, such as fragmentation and other barrier effects. So the title of our study reveals that tunnel length and availability of crossing opportunity matters in wild ungulate use of underpasses. underpasses not designed for wildlife. We all know they can be a fairly common feature in the landscape in order to solve the need for traffic to intersect or to intersect with water courses and so on. And this for sure stress the need to increase our understanding of what type of underpasses may benefit wildlife to cross infrastructure barriers. And there are varying results deviating in the literature. Should we here now? Or? Okay, good. Oh, thank you. So across Sweden, we analyzed 14 underpasses, and 9 underpasses used by moose and 13 underpasses used by road air. And we also included alternative crossing sites that we identified. And alternative crossing sites, they were within the same range of size dimensions as the underpasses that we were analyzing. And all these alternative crossing sites were all within a 2-kilometer radius from the underpasses that we were analyzing. And all underpasses were situated in forested areas, and we had wildlife fencing a minimum of 4 kilometers in each direction from these all underpasses. So the underpass, the infrastructure was a similar physical barrier for all 14 underpasses. So size dimension can for sure vary a lot. It can be one underpass can be very wide, which we would interpret as being very spacious, benefit for ungulates. However, the same underpass can also have a very long tunnel length. So we set up 9 candidate models representing different size dimensions, or a combination of these, such as openness index, width times height divided by tunnel length. And we also did categorizations into 3 like narrow underpasses or medium or spacious underpasses. And we also then had models including alternate nearest distance to alternative crossing sites. And also, so what we did was we put out automatic cameras within 10 meters of the entrances of underpasses, and the cameras were facing towards the entrances. So each data point was while a visit, and it could either result in passing through the underpass or stay put on either side. So all outcomes were converted to a probability of crossing by applying logistic regression. And we used binomial generalized linear mixed effect models, including the underpass ID as a random effect. So based on roughly 800 moose visits, model with tunnel length was highest ranked in order to capture variation in crossing probability. And then other variables we controlled for, such as group size, was also significant in this case. Larger group size increased the probability of crossing through, for instance. So the increased tunnel length was related with a lower crossing probability. And we could see that tunnel length up to 13.5 meters in length was related to more than 50% probability of a moose visit, resulting in crossing through the underpass. And when switching to road air, again, the highest ranked model was a function of tunnel length in explaining variation in crossing probability, based out of 1,400 road air visits. And we also had a difference among seasons and with daylight for road air crossing probability. So increased tunnel length was related with lower crossing probability, and tunnel length exceeding 10 meters was related to less than 50% in crossing probability as a result of road air visiting underpasses. But also parsimonious and second highest ranked model for road air included nearest distance to alternative crossing site. The crossing probability increased with longer distance to alternative crossing site. A longer distance to alternative crossing site may be interpreted as a higher degree of barriers for wildlife, having fewer options, forcing wildlife to choose the actual underpass. At least that is my interpretation of it. We found no such relationship in moose between nearest distance to alternative crossing site and crossing probability. Now, one big difference here between moose and road air is moose have much larger home ranges than road air, and perhaps this increased availability to a variety of different alternative crossing sites results in us not finding any correlation between nearest crossing site and actual crossing probability for moose. The impact on crossing probability from availability of other crossing sites in road air stressed the importance of securing crossing opportunities along infrastructure barriers within a home range scale of the focal species. So provided passage width with a minimum of 3 meters and passage height with a minimum of 2 meters, we conclude that tunnel length seems to describe functionality better than width and height measures for moose and road air. And then I'm ready for taking some questions. Thing was clear cut. No. Then we have a yes.
Andrea Silo, yes. Thank you, Marcus. I was just wondering, because earlier data suggested that it's the width that has a greater effect than length. It probably is a question of the variation that you can study in the passages. So when length is the main factor, is more important than width.
That's correct.
Given the minimum sizes. So what do you propose as a mitigation? How can we improve the passages that are already there or future designs? We can hardly make them short, can we?
No, for sure. Tunnel length is harder to adjust. It is, but it's very important that we have an idea of the functionality when we are mapping what is the degree of barrier effects along infrastructure. And this is, I argue, an important knowledge to keep when running analysis. Where should we create more passages, new passages, wildlife design passages, and in what sections of the road is it sufficient with non-wildlife designed underpasses such as these? But so when we do that, we need to have to focus on the tunnel length. There are studies showing that wider passage width will increase functionality. However, most studies are also saying tunnel length. And what this study is showing is tunnel length is way better accurate measure than passage width. So I need to switch to the next presentation. Okay, so now we have a study presentation entitled Collision Protocol on the French National Road Network. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. So today we're here to talk about our collision protocol. So we are Jean-François Breteau working at the French public institutions, CEREMA, and I and Cruz working at the French Ministry of Transport or Environment. So maybe we can move on. So after a brief background and history of the protocol, we will discuss the data analysis carried out and the method used, the result obtained, and finally we look at the limitations and future prospects. So for a brief context, the National Road Network is made up of 11 directorates covering 11,000 kilometers of roads, and up to now we have 80,000 roadkill data which have been collected by the DEER. And the first test of a roadkill survey using a standardized protocol we carried out in 2010 on the DEER S network east of France. Then the form has been simplified and implemented on the DEER West network, so west of France. And on this basis, a common protocol was drafted in 2015 by the French National Museum of Natural History, and the Ministry of Environment requested all the DEER to implement the collision protocol. So all the network. Do you want to?
Thank you. Road maintenance teams are asked to record the dead animals visible on the road network during their daily maintenance work. They fill the collision in a form, those they use tablets, and report the date, the location, species if possible, at least group of species. Data are then centralized and georeferenced. The aim are twofold: to preserve biodiversity and ensure the safety of road users. Several years of roadkill data on the national road network are now available. And we can see on this slide, this data can be used to carry out various types of analysis. For example, here at top right, the distribution of road collisions since 2013 in 0 networks. Every year, there is a seasonal peak of roadkill in April-May, reflecting seasonal changes in animal activity relate to certain biological traits of this species, like bird dispersal. Perhaps like the first presentation in Spain, we see on the first presentation. We can also count the gross number of collisions per kilometer, but they provide more information than the survey efforts than on the presence of a collision hotspot. Data also show that the bird is a group of species most affected, followed by mustelids and fox. Large mammal, roe deer and rybor, ranks lower at 4th and 6th. But as you know, they cause serious road safety problems. Qualitative analysis is also carried out. For that, we developed a method for grouping species according to similar biological traits. The criteria we used were movement speed, traffic behavior, vital domain size, and habitat. As shown in the diagram at bottom right, 9 groups of species were formed. At the end, the aim is to provide a depth mitigation measure for each group. Collision hotspots are then calculated with using groups of species with similar life cycle traits using the KDE Plus plugin in ArcGIS. The calculation was carried out year by year in order to identify recurring collision hotspots using the count overlapping feature tool available in ArcGIS. Species at risk, like otter, are treated separately, with each collision considered as a separate event to be studied. Collision hotspots identified using the method described above and prioritized and cross-referenced with area environmental issues. This slide shows a few examples of the analysis carried out with, for example, the top right map showing the location of otter collision in the violet dots compared with the number of bench triangles created for this species on the DEER-S network. So we can see the work needed.
The protocol helps to, so we are going to see after studies which results we would use like to do mitigation measures and to improve situations thanks to studies later. So first, the interest of the protocol. The protocol helps to assess the impact of the national road network because the maps produced are fundamental in supporting decision making by identifying hotspots and finding places where to focus mitigation measures. But meanwhile, all the statistic analysis like the trends, seasonal peaks, or the species impacted are also reported to road managers and maintenance staff. So it could be like helpful to raise biodiversity awareness among our workers. And it's also useful to apply better mitigation measures thanks to these new analysis methods. There is also an expansion of the use of the protocol by road managers like departmental and also the data provided to scientific projects. It also limits like an heterogeneous observation pressure because heterogeneous observation pressure and difficulties in identifying species because our maintenance workers has a speed maybe too high to do a good identifying of species. And for a while there were difficulties in data transmission and standardizations, but it has been improved. And this is now we try to apply the collision protocol as a strategy. With the deployment of onboard tablets to have an accuracy, consistency, and traceability of data. And there is better coordination because it's automatically forwarded to technical center. And we try to have training of all the maintenance staff about identifying species. There is a permanent assistance of wildlife experts because every local agency of the CEREMA helps every local directorate. And we have annual reports analyzing the roadkill for every year so that we could have the hotspots, the recommendations about mitigation measures. And we could, with that, we can try to do wildlife messages, but also report to our staff who is recorded always the data. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions,
So thank you very much for interesting presentation. Do we have questions?
Hello, thank you very much. It's very interesting. Is it possible to obtain the data set for the own research projects, either the raw data points or the KDE?
Yeah, I think it's totally possible, but we always have like a fear sometimes from our directorates to publish the data because they're always thinking that they're going to be responsible if we find the hotspot, blah, blah, blah. But now, this is totally possible. And I think we could send you the database if you want.
Many thanks, and thank you for the question, Adrian Meyer. So I think we need to go to the next presenter due to the time here. So now we'll see if the data we're using when mapping roadkills are suffering from biases. The next presentation is entitled Carcass Location Bias in Roadkill Studies. The floor is yours.
So thank you. Okay. So, well, first of all, I apologize for choosing this image, but I think that at that time of the day, I need to capture your attention. So, well, we are talking about this carcass location bias in roadkill studies. Many of the roadkill studies rely on the carcasses we found on the road. And as in this case, you can imagine that if this deer is not in the searching area, wouldn't be counted. So it will be not in our record. So basically we have two circumstances. We have this deer going to the, let's say, to the forest, and wouldn't be counted, or it can be inside the searching area and then it will be counted. Well, we don't really need such a spectacular circumstances, but it may happen that the animal after the collision can still cripple a bit and move outside the searching area, and this animal wouldn't be counted. A similar situation with, especially with flying vertebrates, that after the collision, they finally land outside the searching area. Or also in this case, it may happen that this animal is attached to the vehicle, so it will be never available for being counted. Okay, how frequent is this? How important is this bias? To know that, we spent 4 years recording the fate of animals after the collision. So we were recording direct observation of collisions. So whenever we see a collision, we record where the animal finally land, right? And for the results, we have divided into 2 groups, small vertebrates and medium and large vertebrates. And within these groups, we also consider non-flying and flying. For the first group, small non-flying vertebrates, you can see that the majority of them land on road pavement. So they are not very heavily affected by this bias, but still we have 4 animals that were able to cripple and finally go outside the searching area. These 4 cases were snakes that you probably know that even after being killed, they are able to move a bit and escape from the searching area. For small flying invertebrates, you can see that almost half of them were affected by this bias, mainly because of the rebounding component, but it's very important for this group of animals. Also for medium and large non-flying vertebrates, almost 1/3 of them were affected by this bias. In this case, mainly by the crippling. So they were able to cripple after the collision and go outside the searching area. And for flying medium and large vertebrates, we can see that they could be affected or seem to be affected, but the sample size is too small. So I'm not saying anything about them. Just as conclusion, we here use this carcass location bias as a generalization of the better known rippling bias. Despite our modest sample size, this pioneer study demonstrates that this bias is very relevant, especially for small flying vertebrates, in which almost half of them are affected by this bias. Similarly, up to 1/3 of medium, non-large, non-flying vertebrates are not quantified because of this bias. And up to our knowledge, this is the first time that this carcass location bias is defined and quantified. We are still gathering this kind of information. So if you have directly observed any collision and you know the fate of the carcass, please go to this form and enter this information, and this will help us to know more about this bias. And just for those of you that remain curious about the fate of this animal, that's finally inside, so it will be counted. And thank you for your attention.
Well, many thanks for a very interesting presentation. And it's not often I hear about small mammals and so forth also regarding roadkill data. We often I work myself with large mammals and roadkill. And where I come from in Sweden, you're obliged as a driver that you have to report collisions, but who knows, you have no idea as a driver most often what kind of species it is. And then it's up to the police and hunters that will do the qualification of the data to make sure that it is correct. Has it been a collision or not? And which species get an accuracy on location. So we have time for questions.
Mr. Perricher, good afternoon. Thank you for your presentation. I would like to know if it could be a good idea to count the animal on the pavement, and at the same time on the verges, knowing that it's difficult to do it in the verges because you haven't got the same ability to observe because of vegetation. So I was wondering how we could tackle if we want to check if there is a different position of hotspots if we count both verges and pavement or only pavement.
Well, the majority of roadkill studies consider pavement as the searching area more frequently. So therefore we consider this distinction between pavement, so will be counted, and outside pavement. So we don't have any other distinction, or we don't note whether it was vegetation or any other circumstances. In fact, we only have 150 data, so it's not too much.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Do we have anything online? Any questions? You see that? Okay. So then we continue with our next presenter. So next, no, I think no, we have another one before. So the presentation is entitled, "Do odor repellents influence red deer behavior near roads?" The floor is yours.
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me introduce myself. My name is Reby, and I am PhD student at the Mendel University in Brno. And I am very honored to be here and that I have here possibility to present, let's say, fruits from my research. We did research with colleagues, which was focused on the behavior evaluation of roe deer near the zones where other repellents was installed. Before I will start with the introduction, maybe I will have some quick questionnaire. Just I'm wondering, did you ever heard about the other or olfactory repellents? Please just raise the hands. Okay, just maybe equal, 50-50. Nice. So let me say some basic information which we have to carefully take in account. We know very clearly that linear infrastructure in Europe and also elsewhere continuously increasing. Also, the prediction is not so good for future. Road infrastructure is estimated to increase by 60% up to 2050. And also, we registered increase in the wildlife vehicle collisions, especially in Czech Republic, with which we can see on the right picture. The trend it's clear and linear. The consequence, so it's clear that the effect on the landscape fragmentation and biodiversity loss became important. The accidents of the wildlife vehicle collisions in Czech Republic are ranked on the second place and account approximately 15% of all registered accidents. For your information, average damage after the wildlife vehicle collisions reaches up approximately around 2,000 euros. And statistically, we can say that wildlife vehicle collisions occurs every 6 kilometers in Czech Republic. And the last information, the highest proportion of wildlife vehicle collisions belongs to road deer. It's approximately 80%. And based off all this information, we have to say that mitigation measures are needed. Other repellents or factory repellents or fences are chemical agents which have to stimulate other of predators, basically others of large carnivora such as wolf, bear, lynx, or human as well. Maybe we are large carnivora. And should deter animal from the crossing the rounds and change their behavior in the terms increase their virulence. Other repellents which we used, there was the mixture. One comes from the Czech Republic, it's called Pacholek, and the second one comes from the Germany. We use this both from the reason to be commercially independent. And our design of the work was before and after study. We did the monitoring in the period during the spring, where the wildlife vehicle collisions with the road deer are most registered. So the aim of the study was evaluate the difference between road deer behavior before and after application of other repellents. Effect on the road deer behavior was monitored by camera traps during 2 years. We used videos records. This monitoring places was located at 13 critical sites of wildlife vehicle collisions in northern and southern Moravia in Czech Republic. And our aim was focused on the second and the third class roads because the majority of the proportion of wildlife vehicle collisions is located there. Instead, the traffic volume it's much more lower comparing to highway, for example. Analysis of the behavior was simple. We divided the behavior into the 3 phases and 3 situations. First situation can be expressed like animal arrival, then became some decision phase or reaction, and then continuing to crossing the road. Every phase was measured by time, especially seconds. Second situation which was clear was that animal fast running, then no second phase was registered, and animal crossing the roads. And the third and last situation which we see that was animal arrival and then animal reject to cross the road. Also, we use the traffic counters from the Transport Research Center to estimate impact or synchronizing between the road deer behavior and the wildlife volume. The prediction was that the gap between passing vehicles will be louder then extend the phase number 2. So the road deer will be much more violent. And with the other repellents, we expect that the extension phase will be much more higher than without. Okay, now we go to results. Maybe you're wondering if we register some influence on road deer behavior or not. So I can say clearly that there was no significant prolongation after the application of other repellents. We comparing the phase number 2. So there is the phase of decision or rejection time. We can see on the box plot to the left, the situation with and without is quite clear, and also on the right, where the distribution function shows similar results. Second results was the change of direction. We registered that the change of the rejection of the road crossing is approximately same with and also without the other repellents. And the last results is impact of the traffic effect. We registered only that some negative correlation between or that means that shorter time of gap passing vehicles means a longer decision phase of the road deer. So lower, much more higher decision. Yeah. So we are on the end. That's all from my side. And I would like to also say that no mitigation measure is fully effective, but still there are some ways how to significantly reduce the risk of wildlife vehicle collisions. For example, anticipating and reducing speed at the critical points or hotspots. So this is very needed. And also many thanks to you, to IENE, to be here, and also my colleagues and all who supported this research. And maybe I will have maybe last questionnaire. Maybe I'm wondering if you already applied other repellents in your country, because we are here from different countries. So just raise your hands if you already applied something like that in your country, or if not, just put your hands down. Four people, not so much. Oh, 5. Great. So many thanks once again. Yeah, sure.
And then thanks. We have definitely time for taking some questions.
Okay, thank you for a nice presentation. May I have a question? What was the density or distance between these other repellents? How
we
far
used,
they were from each other?
Yeah, we used the recommendation for installing for other repellents by producers, and I think there was approximately around 8 meters distance between each other or each poles.
Okay, and were you testing if you will put one more between these repellents may help or not?
You mean more?
You know, instead of, let's say, 15 meters as recommended, use 7, or instead of 8, use 4, think like that. How to improve this, because this sounds like it is not working.
Yeah, we didn't focus only on the distance. We only focus on the behavior, and it's quite tricky to get some improvements, because from my personal point of view, there are many factors which can affect the effectiveness of other repellents. For example, weather, or the, let's say, we working with the artificial others. And I think that animals are bounded, the reactions for animals, it's bounded to nature others. Yeah. And for us, from the human point of view, it's very difficult to simulate these others. Yeah, because I think that every others of predator has special ID, and animals knows it is good predator or not, something like that. So
Were you consulting these results with Abuku or other manufacturers of these repellents? Because if I manufacture, I would be interested in okay, what I'm doing, it is working or not. So you are saying it is not working. So do they know this?
yeah, I think maybe yes or no, but it depends on the company. Yeah, but the main goal of the company is sell everything. Yeah, so
Okay, well, it's better to sell something what is working. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we have a question.
yeah, yes, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And it's my contribution is much more to encourage you to publish. I know your team is great on that. So, because there are many trials of these products in many countries, most of us never publish really the results. So this is why we are repeating once and again this kind of text. I must say, in the handbook that we have, IENE have recently published, these measures are, let's say, have not a red dot, that means never put it, but an orange dot, which means it can have an effect. But once and again, we see it's temporary. And there is an habituation of the animals more with some weeks, some months. So it's don't use it, but it's just temporary. We cannot trust that this is going to solve us the problem.
The question
is to use these products just for temporary periods if you want to use it, but it's not a solution for reducing the collisions.
Yeah, that's true.
You agree with her? Yes.
Yeah.
So just once more, it's like reflectors, yeah? That I think we must trust fabrics. Base it on evidence and the revision of all.
Yeah. I know up in Sweden, we have used this type of odor repellent without any effect whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And I also think we're talking about the density, the distance in between odor repellents. Well, if we decrease the distance, that will also generate even more exposure for wildlife to this. And I'm sure with increasing exposure, which you kind of need, but that will also lead to more habituation to it. So. I must say, I feel myself that I definitely hesitate that you go for just one of the stimulants. When a road air will go on underneath the underpass, it's the whole. I mean, they are evolved for taking in on all the stimulants. We know that they are very, very careful for the sounds and what they're smelling, the cars, the noises. It's the package, the combination that will trigger a response or not. That's my hunch of it, at least. Okay, so many thanks. Do we have time? If there are more questions, there we have some.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Well, just a single observation, very empirical. On all the bridges, we do have in France. We have some other bridges where walls are laying their hoops. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, you have high level of road deer passages on the same other bridges. So I don't really see the point in well, there is something that is a bit awkward with repellents, it's very easy to observe on any wild tracks, the prey, and then the predator, and then the prey. It doesn't prevent any of them from passing or from preventing them from passing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there is something awkward or difficult to understand in the theory of repellent form. Hello? Will?
Yeah.
Nice theory.
But that was probably the goal of the producer to repel the crossing and also to change the behavior. That is the goal of producers. But from our zoological, ecological point of view, it's not make sense. Yeah. And also the big deal is the habituation. Yeah. Because currently everything's changing rapidly, and also the animals are changing rapidly. Their behavior, so on. So the habitation is the crucial.
And they are not as stupid in that sense either.
Yeah.
Animals, they will, if you see a scat from wolf, sure, they have been on the same spot, but you have a temporal segregation. Very often, so I mean, carnivore and the prey can use the same spot. Have a next.
Thank you very much. I have a serious complaint to how we use the terminology. I think it's something that we should think about. When we say already give the impression that this is a repellent, and then we start thinking about how can we test this? Is this really a repellent or not? Because we're already thinking that this is repellent because it's called repellent. The same with the wildlife reflectors. We call them wildlife reflectors, virtual fence. We already think that, it must be reflecting something for wildlife. Unless this is really proven, I would suggest just call them what they are, foam or
other foam.
other foam or something, whatever, but not a repellent. You have to prove that this is functional, and then you can call it a repellent. Because we are often, it's again that companies will sell us products, reflectors, these smelling things. We have trials with that as well. And all you get is you pay money, and governments or municipalities invest a lot in this. And the only thing that is happening is that these companies earn a lot of money and you have no effect, and people believe they have to.
Many thanks, Andreas. So, yeah, we don't know if we should call it a stimulus, even or foam perhaps. We have one comment online, and after that we will go to the next speaker. So Henrik Wildenskild online.
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Ask your comment or now if you want, please.
Yeah. It's just a comment. I read about a project in US where they reintroduced the wolf in some areas, and that actually decreased, if I remember it correctly, it was about 30% or 40% with wildlife accident with deer. I remember, if I remember correctly. But that shows that the real presence of predators actually has an effect, but not so. Maybe the animals are not that stupid, They don't see other signs of the predators besides those foams. But I mean, maybe they should be placed not so near the road, but maybe more random around the road could also be checked out. But yeah, I hope you heard my question.
Yes, we hear you very good here. So, and I guess the whole application along linear infrastructure is a bit tricky to get an impact in reduction in vehicle collisions and so forth if you would distribute it random also. So